Okay, hey neighbors. Today we are going to be discussing practical, cool typography that you would swear had to be done with Photoshop, but we're still going to keep it simple and subtle and practical, but you probably wouldn't know that it could be done with CSS. So let's take a look at our final product. Now I've zoomed in quite a bit so you can see it, and this is deceptively simple, and that's what we want. Subtlety is key. So let's just take a look at what we have here. We have a nice font. I believe it's Myriad Pro, and we have a text gradient. I bet you didn't know you could do text gradients with a little bit of trickery in Webkit browsers. We can do it. We have a gradient going from almost totally white down to just off-white. Okay. Now all around it, hopefully you can see it on this lower resolution, all around this text, we have a text stroke. Did you know you can create strokes in some browsers? And we have a white stroke going all the way around it. Then we have two different forms of text shadow. And I'm applying that here because this heading is also a parent of an anchor tag. So if you look up here, we have a kind of a light gradient, almost gives it a 3D effect. I'm sorry, a light shadow. But then if you go down further, we have more of a traditional dark shadow. So we're using two different levels of shadows here. So we got a lot going on, and it creates really nice text that usually if you're creating a logo or a heading, you'd have to use Photoshop. And then just to have fun, we'll also go ahead and turn this into transitions. So we can take advantage of the latest transitions. If we scroll over this, simple text transitions, but we are also using gradients so that it transitions to almost kind of a green to a white to a green. And I have that transition much slower so you can see the effect than you would naturally do. But we're going to build this, and we're going to see it's not as hard as you might think to really create very subtle but nice advanced looking text. Okay, so if I refresh the page, we have a blank page like we always begin. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to open up TextMate, and the first thing we need to do is create just a simple heading. So this will probably be a link somewhere. We'll create an empty link. And with the text, what did we call it? Hello, readers. Okay, there we are. There we are. So within style tags, we'll just put this at the top to keep things quick. And I'm going to begin just with the opening stuff. We'll give it a background of kind of a grayish color, and I think that should be fine. There we go. Maybe give it some padding all around just to push it off from the edge. Okay, so now we are going to style the H1 tag. So there's a few things we need to do here first. First, let's give it a font size, and let's see how big we need it so you can see it well. That looks pretty good. 200 pixels. Yours would obviously be much smaller, and that's okay. We'll give it a margin top. Let's zero out the margin on the top just to push it up. But you know what? That's not even necessary. Next, I'm going to give it a font family. We could stick with the default, or why don't we first start with something like a Myriad Pro. And then we can fall back for the users who could support it to Myriad. And then Helvetica, Arial, and then always a fallback, sans serif. Okay, and you know what? With that in mind, we should probably lower it because this font's slightly different. Okay, so now it's just a slightly different font. I do like the Myriad Pro font. Next, let's go ahead and add a text shadow to this font. So we don't need any kind of vendor prefix, which is nice. And I'm going to set an X offset 2 pixels, so kind of push it to the right 2 pixels, push it down around 3 pixels, and the blur, how much blur? About 3 pixels worth of blur. And I'm going to make the color of this shadow almost black. So there you can see. So you can see if I zoom in, you can see just kind of a nice shadow. Okay, don't worry, we'll get rid of that color. So next, and for now, why don't we just go ahead and go H1A, just for the time being while we're working. Give it a color of white. There you go. And now you can see the shadow. Text decoration to none. You know, I try to do these one-line things, and I just can't do it. I get too confused. Okay, so there we go. So if we go back to our heading 1 tag, we need to do a bit more now, and we're going to adjust the letter spacing. So we can change that with letter spacing, and I'm going to give it a negative number. Now, as this is a very big font, I can do a high number like -7. However, with smaller fonts, you might stick with -1. That was popular last year. But we can see here that just kind of pushes it up just a little bit closer. Now we're going to take a look at one you may not know, and this is Webkit specific. It's something they're working with, and it's the text stroke property. So these are the properties that are available to you. However, for now, you need to make sure that you prefix them with the -webkit prefix. So let's take a look at what we can do here. We can say -webkit text stroke, and we can combine them here. So you see you have text fill color. This is the color for the fill. Now what this is helpful is if you set this to transparent, you can kind of create the illusion of only an outline with like you would do in Photoshop. We'll do a quick example of that later. Then you can set the color and the width, or text stroke will combine both of those two above. And that's what we need right here. So I'll do, I don't know, let's say 1 pixel stroke of white, and this is going to outline all of our text. Okay, so just to make sure you see it, let's change it to red, and now you can see that's outlining. And that's a nifty little trick. But of course in Firefox that's not going to work, and that's okay, no big deal. Okay, so now, this is already looking good, but now we need to style our anchor tag. So we got rid of the underline, and we set the color to white. Now I'm going to do something a bit different here, and I'm going to set a position to absolute, because I want to position it relative to the heading 1 parent. But as we know, when you're positioning it in relation to its parent, the parent needs to be positioned as well. So we'll set a positioning context for the h1 tag. Next, if we come down, I'm going to take advantage of Webkit mask image. And this is, we're going to mask this image. That way we can create our text gradient. But before we do that, I'm just going to hide that from modern browsers for now. Let's take advantage of the after. So we'll do h1 after. And this is what we're going to do here. You could maybe do this dynamically, but for now we'll hard code it in, and we're going to add this text after. So content, it's a bit of a trick. I didn't create it. Okay, so we're adding, after the h1 tag, we're adding content of the exact same text, and we're going to set a color, and this color is going to be about db, db, db. So if you want to check that out, see what color that is, you can see it's just kind of a darker white, almost a grayish color. So if I save that, and if I want to come back to Chrome, if I refresh the page, it's just slightly different. So let's go back, and again, so you can see the effect, change it to red, and you're not going to see anything just yet. And that's what we want, because we are going to apply a gradient on the H1 from fully opaque to transparent, and that will reveal the color underneath. So that's why I'm setting just kind of a darker color. Okay, we'll keep it just like that. Next, let's go up to our anchor tag, and we can take advantage of Webkit mask image now. And all I want to do is I want to say take this image and mask it so it goes from top where it's fully opaque to the bottom where it's fully transparent. So we'll do Webkit gradient, and it's going to be a linear gradient from left top to left bottom. And we're going to go from, in order to set red, green, blue plus alpha, we can take advantage of RGBA, and we're just going to do from 0, 0, 0, 1. So if you're not familiar with these kind of codes, let's try it out in here. If we set it to 0, 0, 0, you're going to get all black. Okay, so we're going to take it all the way black, and then we're going to take the alpha, which is A, and we're going to take that all the way down to 0, and that'll make it transparent. So we have that one, 2, RGBA, and you can do color stops if you want to work with the different levels, so you could do a color stop at an alpha of 0.5 and then change it. You can do whatever you want. But here, we'll just keep it simple, 2 from to 0, okay? Fully opaque all the way down to transparent. So now, again, we are getting a slightly different color. So hopefully this is apparent. I'm going to go back and change this to red again, and now you're going to really see the effect. And now you can see it starts transparent and it goes all the way down, all right? So for instance, if I were to change that to 0 and move that all the way up to 1, where it's fully visible, you're going to see it's the reverse. So whatever you need for your particular project. Okay, let's bring this back, because all we want is subtlety. We're working with this kind of white grayish color. But we're not done yet, so let's add a little more depth. So I'm going to go back to my anchor tag, and let's add another text shadow to the anchor tag. So we have a text shadow on the H1, and we're just going to add a little bit more depth. So if I were to set 0, 5 pixel 0 red, just so you can see that even though it's red, we have the red up here, down here it's going to be affected by the transparency as well as the shadows, so it's going to be a darker color. And that's what we want here, so we can take advantage of that. And we'll change it to E9, E9, E9. If you want to take a look at what color this is in Photoshop, you can see it's just a slightly different shade, and that's what we want here. So text shadow, I'm going to do 0 and 2 pixels down on the y-axis. Save that, and we come back, and now we're getting a really nice effect. And what's nice is the higher the resolution you're on, like I'm on a very low resolution for the screencast, so admittedly it's a bit blurry, but on your computer, assuming you have a nice monitor, it's going to look crisp and clean. So look at what we have there. We have the text outline. We have what seems as 2 different layers of text shadow. We have a text gradient. We're doing a lot here. And if we want to take it one more step further and take advantage of the new transitions, we can do that as well. And we can apply it in a couple ways. So let's try it first by applying it when the user hovers over the anchor tag, or better yet, when they hover over the anchor tag right there. And we'll give it a color of, and let's go into Photoshop and grab a color. So I just kind of grabbed the NetTouch logo, and let's grab this 185 850. So let's go in and we're going to set the color when you hover over it to that color. And try it out when we hover over it. And look, we already get that because that color is still bound to the gradients of the H1 tag. So you get that nice effect. Very cool. Additionally, if you want to add a transition to it, like I mentioned, we can do it, and we can say Webkit transition. And we can say, what are we transitioning? Let's just do all, or let's just do color for now. We're going to transition the color property, and just for this demo, I'm going to set it pretty high to about 1 second so that you can see it. So now if I hover over it, over the course of 1 second it turns green. But as soon as we hover off, it disappears. You see that really snap? And that's because we're only applying a transition when we hover. We're not applying it to the default state of the anchor tag. So watch what happens if I grab this and I apply it there. And you know what? Let's go ahead and add Moz, transition, color 1 second, transition, color. It's always good practice to do this. Okay, and now when I hover over it, fades in over a second, and I hover off, and it goes out over a second. So practically you might do this at 0.3 or 0.2, something just really quick, but still noticeable as having just a nice fade in effect. Now, of course, you can transition anything. So, well, not anything, but if we want to mess with this right here, we could copy that, and let's change that around. You can change the text shadow so that when you hover over it, the shadow changes. That might make sense. Why don't we, right here, we'll say, rather than from 1 to 0, we'll go 1 to 50%. And this time, we're not transitioning only the color. We could do color and then this one, or for now, let's just do all. And that'll transition all properties. So now if we do it, you can see that it's changed the way we've masked the image just slightly. So you're free to play around with that as much as you want. I'm not going to worry about this for now. And now, with a bit of effort, but still, all you have to do is do this once. You can copy all of this into a text expander program and then paste it in and modify it however you want. If you want it for your blog headings or for anything, and you have really nice effects. In Firefox, it doesn't look quite as sharp, but refresh the page. It still looks quite nice. It's just a little bit more solid. So let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you again. Bye.